This is The Express with Gary Allen, your 360-degree view of the world. Now, here's your host, Gary Allen.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to an exciting Tuesday night here in the month of September. Things are cooling down across the rest of the country, I hope. Tonight we have a great guest on. It'll be Gary McKechnie. He's a foremost authority on motorcycle touring around the country, and he was with us. He was my second guest that we had last year, EW, and he's coming back with us tonight, and I'm excited about that. We got some exciting shows coming up in the future. I'm glad to be back with you this week. EW, good evening to you.
Good evening.
How are you this week?
Sick as a dog.
Yeah, I've never been sick as a dog, but I've been as sick as a cat. By the way, if you'll notice in front of you, there is a green button and a yellow button. The yellow button is there to remind you not to touch the green button, which reminds you not to touch the red button, please.
I love the red button.
Yes, I know. Before we get into tonight's show, Gary will be joining us in just a couple of minutes. It's easy to remember his name. I want to bring up something. Of course, as you know, EW, there's a lot of controversy going on about the in Washington, D.C., the Washington NFL football franchise, and I won't mention their nickname because I have found it offensive for many, many years. I thought our listeners would be interested to know that while every other NFL team's sales of merchandise is rising up between 3 and 5% since the beginning of the season, and that will increase as the season goes on, the Washington franchise's merchandise, buying T-shirts, hats, and other merchandise has plunged 35% over the last 8 months.
Interesting. By the way, Randy is in the chat room, and he says hello to you.
Tell Randy good evening, and thank you very much. It's terribly nice to have Randy with us. He's one of my loyal listeners and a listener of this program, as well as the network. And before we get to Gary, who I know has just joined us online, EW, tell everybody how they can not only listen to this show, but get the rebroadcast of other shows, and how they can listen to us if they don't live and in person.
Well, if you're not on the website listening to us at tmvcafe.com, you can listen to us through your wonderful smart devices and many other things out there, such as Roku, your game stations, and so forth, through TuneIn, Stream Finder, and many other wonderful sources. And just check out TMV Cafe, and you can find out where you can listen to all the other shows right there on the website itself.
Well, that's really great, and we do have Gary McKechnie, who has just joined us. Gary's favorite expression is, I think I have this right, Gary, get off your laptop and hit the blacktop.
That's it.
Let me tell you, everybody, a little bit about him. Gary McKechnie is recognized as one of the foremost authorities on motorcycle touring. Motorcycle Industry Council voted him that, and is a two-time winner of the Society of American Travel Writers. He's the winner of the Lowell Thomas Travel Journalism Silver Award, known as the Pulitzer Prize for Travel Journalism. He's a former stand-up comic, which I did not know that. He is, by Round Trip Magazine, dubbed as the Mark Twain of motorcycling, which tells me that he's never met a road he didn't like. And as a public speaker and expert on motorcycle touring, he has addressed groups of American travel and history and lectures at sea aboard many of our prestigious cruise ships out there, such as the Cunard, Silver Sea, Seabourn, and Princess lines. Gary connects with groups connections with groups stems from his ability to condense decades of exploration into intriguing presentations with enlightened audiences, pecking their curiosity and fires their imagination with the magic of American ingenuity and the power of travel. Good evening to you, Mr. McKechnie.
Oh, hello, Gary. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. I've had a rough couple of days. I was going to say it before. I went to a funeral yesterday, and the last of my mother's longtime friends passed away on Saturday, and she's going to be laid to rest tomorrow. So it's been a rough couple of days.
Well, I sympathize with you. Yeah, just today, we had to say goodbye to one of our kitty cats. Yeah, not human, but the same process, I think.
Yeah, I too, and I'm also dealing with this new system that I brought into my computer. It's called IPDTL, which is the new ISDN line, and me and technology, EW, will testify to this. I know nothing about it. I'm lost in the forest, even after working with it today a little bit. So I'm lost. By the way, I also wanted to remind people that you've been on CNN, CBS Radio, NPR, Southern Living, And here's almost my first question out of the box. You were also on The Price is Right. How in the name of God did you do that?
Oh, I wasn't kind of sort of on The Price is Right. Actually, my book. It was funny. They were giving away a prize package that included a couple of motorcycles, and they put my book as one of the prizes, which I thought was interesting. So my book was on national television, and but I was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire way back when, and that didn't turn out so well.
But yeah, you're not a millionaire, I guess.
No, not yet. Yeah, and I don't think I can go back on the show, but we'll leave it at that.
I did not know that you were a former stand-up comic.
Yeah, that was one of the first things I did. I was in college, and I kept thinking, I had a pretty good sense of humor, and there was a comedy club. It was when they were getting started, like in the early '80s, and so I just started writing material for other comedians. And then when they were doing it and getting laughs, I thought, hey, well, wait a second, I can do this myself. Yeah. So I started doing stand-up.
And of course, I guess that's where from Road Trip magazine, where they dubbed you the Mark Twain of motorcycling. I guess I kiddingly, tongue-in-cheek said, because I guess you never met a road you didn't like, but I guess that's probably true.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I've been very fortunate to be able to combine my passion for travel with my, I guess, I've always had a good sense of humor. So, I've been able to put both of those together. And, that was a nice phrase, a nice honor that magazine gave me, the Mark Twain of motorcycling. That again, that was one person's opinion, but it has a nice ring to it.
Yeah, I mean, to be praised like that. Where did this love for adventure and travel start for you? As a youngster or as you grew older?
Yeah. It did start as a youngster, and I was born in '62, and in 1970, my dad said, "Well, we'll drive out to Arizona, where my grandparents live." So from Orlando, just outside Orlando, to Scottsdale, Arizona, and so we got in the car and we started going, and it's like, well, this is pretty cool. We're driving all the way to Arizona, and you could see the land change. As you're rocketing across the country in a 1965 Chrysler New Yorker, and then the following year in '71, he said, well, "Okay, we're going to drive to Arizona, but we're going to do it via Chicago to see my uncle, and then across Wyoming, and then out to San Francisco, down to L.A., backtrack to Arizona, and then back to Florida." And we did that, and it was like, man, I've just seen the whole country. And then I was always watching the news with Walter Cronkite, and then with Walter Cronkite came Charles Kuralt, who was on the road. And I saw this guy who made a living traveling across America, and I thought, hey, if I can get a job like that guy and, get paid to travel, have somebody subsidize my vacations, what's not to love? So that's how I got started.
I think the first time you were on, we talked about this briefly, but and I don't think you were aware of it then, and you are now. But for those who didn't catch you the first time, after he died and they had his funeral, suddenly all these women showed up for his funeral, and there was his wife sitting there. And apparently, one of the reasons why Charles Kuralt enjoyed being on the road was that he had a concubine going on the road while he was in different cities. He had a lot of lady friends.
Yeah, apparently he had a secret life, I guess. And it's just sort of sad, that it turned out that way, and hopefully that doesn't overshadow who this guy was. Because I still go on YouTube and I'll click in Charles Kuralt, and some of the best travel stories come up. And you're just like astounded at how good this guy was. Just to be able to capture the essence of a story, put a spin on it, and have it. It was like poetry the way he was putting this stuff together. So yeah, he had this thing going, but hopefully it like I said, people will look at him and read his stories and just say good job.
Oh, yeah, I always enjoyed it, and I loved his voice. Charles Kuralt, and here I am in McKechine, Illinois, and I'm talking to.
Yeah, he did. He had that great voice, and he had one. There was up in Mace's, I think it's called Mace's Corners, North Carolina. There's a place called the Mass General Store. And he went there one time. I mean, it's way out in the middle of nowhere, the Mass General Store out in this place. And he did a story there, and they had a printed transcript of what he had said. And he said, and you read it in his Charles Kuralt voice, and he goes, "Where will I send you to find the soul of America? I think I will send you to Mesa Springs, North Carolina, to the Mass General Store." And you're going, wow,
Yeah.
It just adds a resonance to it. The guy was brilliant.
Oh, he really, really was. You brought up an interesting point. Back in the 60s, and of course, with my family, it was a little bit different since I come from an airline family, an airline background. Most people traveled by car because the highways were relatively new, the interstate highways. Now, for those of us that are from Florida, I-95 really didn't get finished until I think, early 70s. So it connected north and south all along the East Coast. But most people traveled by car before airline travel became the thing. Of course, prior to that, there was train travel. But do you find that people now, even with the price of gas, are starting to travel, whether it be a motorcycle or a car, more and more now adventuring out and seeing what's in the United States?
Yeah, I think what's happening now, and I think you're going to start to see a shift, is that this big wave of baby boomers, people born between 1945 and 64, are now the youngest baby boomers, 50 years old now. And I think after a time, people start to sense that, hey, I've put in a lot of time at the office. I've sat in a cubicle. I sort of followed that instruction. You just work and you climb your way up the ladder and you try to get the promotion. You do all this stuff, and then at the end of the day, it's like, well, what's all that about? I haven't explored America. So I'm talking to a lot of people, and especially when I go out there. Through social media, they're a little bit jealous, they're a little bit envious, and I try to stoke their enthusiasm. Hey, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Anybody can get out there and go out and travel. You don't need if you're an American citizen, if you think about it, man, we've got 3 million miles of road in the United States, and you don't need a passport. You just need, a tank of gas and a desire, and then you can just go out and zip around. Hey, and if you can't afford a hotel, or you think, well, it's going to be so expensive to do this stuff, well, figure out other ways around it. I mean, if say you're a school teacher and you've got the summer off, well, you can go to Xanterra.com. They're the ones who staff the national parks because they all need they all need employees, especially during the peak season. And you could work in a national park for a season, and make a little bit of cash, and have a place to stay. So there's a lot of ways around it. I mean, you can be a bus driver, work at Disney World. You can get a job somewhere for a while, and just change your settings, change your scenery. I have to do that, man. Gary, sometimes it's like I'll be driving home, and I'll take a different road home just because I'm so bored, with taking the same roads. And I know when that happens, it's like I need to take a trip again because I need to change the scenery. And I've got to do it just by coming down 11th Avenue instead of 6th Avenue. And so I think people just need to. It's easy for me to say it. Take control of your life, and just start saying, "Hey, is this what makes me happy? Is staying at home, working, working every day, and having all these responsibilities what makes me happy, or is there something out there? Maybe Mount Rushmore, Custer State Park in South Dakota, or maybe it's Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, or maybe it's the Apache Trail north of Phoenix, Arizona. Maybe there's just something out there, and it doesn't have to be a long trip. You don't have to, go to Alaska to find adventure. You can probably drive within an hour of your house and find something new. I mean, I write for Visit Florida. I'm the off the beaten path insider for the state, so I get to ramble around. And, the last couple of weeks I've been bopping up to Jacksonville, and I found a Civil War-era plantation. There were 300 slaves working at this place. And I drive onto the property, and there's an arc of old buildings, and I'm thinking, I wonder what this is all about. It looked like, public art sculpture. No, those were the old slave cabins that were just disintegrating. And it's like, holy mackerel. And again, that's just a few hours from my house, and I've lived in Florida for 52 years, So you can always find something new.
Your favorite mode of transportation is the motorcycle. Why the motorcycle over the car or, say, a camper?
Why a motorcycle? For me, the motorcycle it gives you a little bit more freedom. I mean, you're out in the elements as long as you're safe. And knock wood, I've never laid a motorcycle down, never had an accident, never got a ticket or a fine. But you're just out in the open. You can smell things, see things, experience things, feel things that you just can't do in a car. When I'm in a car driving, I usually have the radio turned up. I've got the windows rolled up, and I've got the air blasting, and I'm sort of removed from the environment. I did a trip in May. I rode from San Diego to New York City. As part of the Cannonball Centennial ride. I was fortunate enough to be invited to go on that, and so. Leaving San Diego and then going through the canyons and the twisties around there, and then all of a sudden I'm in Yuma, Arizona, and then going up toward Mesa, and then to Socorro, New Mexico, and working my way over to Colorado, and then Kansas. And you can just see the land change, and you can feel it change, and you can smell it. In just being exposed to America for 3,450 miles, it was phenomenal. When I'm riding across Kansas. In western Kansas, outside Garden City, boy, all of a sudden there was nothing. I mean, you went through this little town, and all of a sudden there was nothing but the plains, the Kansas plains in front of you. And when that happened, the wind picked up because there was nothing to block the wind. And so I'm riding down the highway like at a 45-degree angle, just trying to keep the bike upright, keep the bike and myself upright. But I mean, you could just feel it. If I were in a car, it would hit the side of the car. But on a motorcycle, man, all your senses have to be engaged. So it really makes you feel alive. So hopefully, maybe that answers that question, I suppose. I hope.
Speaking of senses, you have been through every part of this country. I don't think there's any back road that you haven't been to, and you've written a number of books. The USA 101, A Guide to America's Iconic Places, Events, and Festivals. The Great American Motorcycle Tours about the Northwest, or about the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic states, the Midwest. You have a book about just about every place anybody would like to go to, and you are sort of the official guide. But it's a question that I sort of posed to you the other day. As you're riding along on your motorcycle, and you're taking in these breathtaking views, like when I went to Death Valley, in spite of its name, it's absolutely breathtaking. I said to a friend of mine once, I said, there are certain parts of Death Valley that this is not going to happen in our lifetime. But if there was ever a place where a Jurassic Park could kind of be hidden away from the rest of the world, for those of you that have ever been to Death Valley, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, it is so remote and so far out there that if ever there was a place where dinosaurs could be and never be discovered, even by tourists because of the canyons, it would be there. What goes through your mind as you take in these breathtaking sunsets and sunrises and roadways and hills and valleys and mountains and everything? What emotionally, what do you go through as you're going through a trip? What do you feel?
That's a great question, and Death Valley is a great place to discuss that, because I did that a couple of years ago. I did it the first time I did it. It was at night, and it was frightening, absolutely frightening, because I had no idea that going across Death Valley, being from Florida, it's like, well, what's a valley? But no, I had to cross two mountain chains to get into the valley, and so I did that at night because I just gotten a late start out of Las Vegas. So this time I was prepared. I stayed in Pahrump, sort of on the eastern side of Death Valley, and I got up early. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna get started at 6 o'clock. I'll be across Death Valley by 9 o'clock. I'll be in Lone Pine, California, and everything will be well. Well, that was the plan. That was the plan, Gary. And man alive, I got into the valley. I got to Furnace Creek probably about like 9 o'clock or so, because I was stopping to take pictures. I was in the middle of Death Valley probably about 10:30 or so, and it was 117 degrees. And I remember getting to Panamint Springs, I believe it was, or maybe it was Stovepipe Wells. And the thing about that was, I was just thinking, what now, what next? What now, what next? Because I kept thinking, I've got to be really sharp. I was sweating like crazy. I just kept thinking, okay, I've just got to tune in. And if I let my mind wander, if I didn't focus on what was going on, especially in Death Valley, it could have serious implications. If I got a little bit of heat stroke, like wearing a helmet, you're it's pretty hot under there. And so I kept thinking, all right, just focus, stay alert. And hey, I've got a curve coming up. Be ready for this. Hey, here comes a truck. I'm gonna get hit by that big air, that big blast of air that's going to come right when he passes me. Right. And I would have to duck down so the bike wouldn't shake. And again, if I were in a car, I'd have the windows up, the radio on, and the air going. Right. On a motorcycle, I had to be really careful. And when I was going through the climbing up over the Sierra Madre Mountains, it was crazy. Because it was like now I could see it. Before, when I did it at night, I couldn't tell there was like a 300 or 400 foot drop.
Oh, wow.
Maybe about 6 feet to my right. So it's like, again, you can't fool around. But then I say that, but one thing that happened on the first trip before the sunset, I had this weird out-of-body experience because Death Valley is so big, and people who have not been there just don't realize how big it is and how empty it is. And like you say, it could be Jurassic Park. And I remember I was coming around this corner. It was like a real wide corner, and I could see myself riding the motorcycle. I was this little pin-sized guy riding a motorcycle, and I could watch myself. And it was like, how did that happen? And then I was, back on the bike again. It was the strangest thing. And a few years later, I met, I think it was Dennis Hopper. Who was a pretty avid motorcyclist, and he had ridden from San Francisco to Las Vegas, where I saw him. Mm-hmm. And he was describing to the reporters, riding across Death Valley. And they said, "Oh, well, what was it like?" And he goes, "Oh man, it was a spiritual experience. It was like an out-of-body experience." And I'm thinking, hey, so it's not just me.
Oh no.
So
no.
It was good to get some corroboration on that.
When I went there, I went with my really good friend Rick Denise, who came out to Las Vegas to visit, and we went up. It's like a full 12-hour day out of Las Vegas between driving to the northern rim and then coming all the way back down to the south and going through over the hump to Pahrump, as we used to say in Las Vegas. But I will tell you, some of the most breathtaking views, particularly when you get down on the south end and you can stand up on the mountain, on the eastern mountain, and look out and you can see the whole valley floor. And here's the weird part. I didn't learn this, and for those of you who are listening that are interested in this, Death Valley at one time used to be a gigantic lake about the size of one of the Great Lakes. That's how it originally was formed. And the mountains rose up from that as the glaciers retreated. But here's the funny thing. Underneath the Death Valley floor, about, I think, 5 or 6 miles or maybe further down, is an entire Mediterranean-sized ocean of water underneath Death Valley.
Wow.
It's just laying there, but if it was allowed to seep up, that whole Death Valley and the mountain ranges around it would just collapse within it. And for those of you who are not familiar with it, on the western side of Death Valley are these huge mountains, and I can't remember, Gary, what the name of those mountains were.
Maybe it's the Inyo. Is it the Inyo Mountains?
It could be.
I thought it was Sierra Madre. One or the other.
One or the other, and that is the reason why Death Valley is so hot, because the storms never can make it up over that mountain clear enough to drop enough rain, and the air rushes down the sides of those mountains, and when it does, it picks up heat, and that's why at the bottom, sometimes it's 117 to 120 degrees, and the one thing that really got me was on the southern end of Death Valley, you can literally stand on the lowest point below sea level and look up, and there's the sign where sea level should be.
Oh my.
It's just breathtaking, along with painter's palette and all the other things that you can see while you're there. It is absolutely magnificent. And then, of course, you see the critters, the rattlesnakes coming across the road and everything else like that. But it is a magnificent drive. I do recommend it, as I do if you can go to the Four Corners and see the giant the giant crater, or go to Zion, or go to Bear Mountain in New York, which I've been, and which you have been. These are some of the most. America's got some of the most breathtaking places, like Devil's Mountain in the Black Hills. I was so I collect Native American stuff, Gary, as we talked about the last time you were on. And when I got to go to Devil's Mountain, which for those of you that are familiar with what was that movie about with what's his name?
Close Encounters. Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters, yes.
That mountain does exist, ladies and gentlemen, and it's in the Dakotas.
Yeah, Devil's Tower, and how it got that way is beyond me. And those big long claw marks, they said it was an Indian legend. They said a bear was trying to scratch the side of the mountain to get at these 7 Indian girls. But in any event, there's so much out there, and it's really a disservice that people live in this country and don't explore.
It's true.
And again, you don't have to go far. I mean, if you live in Arkansas, you can get on Scenic 7 and go tooling between Hot Springs and Eureka Springs. If you live in Georgia, you can bop over to Savannah and then just drive up the coast to Charleston, and get a little bit of Civil War history going.
Yeah.
In Texas, you can explore hill country. There's just so many things out there that again, it's really. Just go out and do it. That's all you need to do.
You travel along I-10, go through Alabama. You can see the great battleship, the USS Alabama, and you go through I-20 or I-40. You can see, I think it's is it I-40? Yeah, no, I-20, where the Four Corners meets. And you can see the great crater there that was created by the asteroid that hit. You were talking about Devil's Mountain. The reason that all those striations are in the mountain, it has to do more with erosion and the snow and the rain and everything that's created those gullies and all that. By the way, that was part of a huge mountain at one time, and then when the glaciers came south and then receded north, that was the strongest part of the mountain, and everything else over the years. They say that about 100 years ago or 200 years ago, Devil's Mountain was a whole lot bigger than it is now. But it is interesting that that it was supposed to be bear claws and stuff. Well, when it comes to that kind of lure, I kind of have an idea of what's going on.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think I'm preaching to the choir now, because you like to travel and I like to travel, and if we can encourage people to do that, then good for us.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's fabulous. Now, as I said earlier, I don't think there is a roadway in the world, a back roadway, that you haven't probably traveled to. But let's talk about some of your favorite places you've been as far as food is concerned, or lodging, or just all around great American people that you've met along the way.
Oh, well, I'll tell you one. When I was in Kansas, I was riding a motorcycle. I started in Omaha and then went down to Pawnee City, and then through, what's the name of it? Oberlin, and I'm sorry, Concordia, and then, heading west across Kansas. And my wife was, I'm on the motorcycle, my wife's behind me in a car, and she's taking pictures of me on the bike for the book. And, as we're tooling along, we would stop, and frame a picture. I'd, stop and, park the bike. And these cars would go by. And, there was always a pickup truck, usually a dog in the back. And these cars would go by, and then they'd get about, 100 feet away, and then you'd see the brake lights go on, then the reverse lights come on, and then they'd back up. Oh, y'all okay? Do y'all need any help? And it was like they were always, everybody was so helpful. Everybody wanted to make sure, we were okay. And it's like, we're just doing this. And it was sort of like this friendliness that you found, all across the country. And then you'd get to a place, and I can't tell you how many times this would happen. I'd park the bike, and Sometimes it would have a Florida tag on it, or if I, had used a bike that I'd pick up in LA, it'd have a California plate. And I would be in, Washington State or Oregon, or I'd be in Idaho or Wyoming or Montana. And, you just go to these places, and people would see the license plate. Are you really from there? Yeah, I'm really from there. And it's like, wow, and they just want to talk. Everybody just wanted to talk, and they want to know how you did it. And they say, well, gosh, I'll never get out of here. I never get to travel. And, then all of a sudden you're just sitting there becoming sort of a life coach, trying to get them interested in, getting out there and going.
Yeah.
And, hey, I'll tell you another neat one. When we were on the cross country trip, going from San Diego to New York City.
Yeah, the Cannonball experience.
Yeah, the Cannonball Centennial ride. We would get to town, and there would be a proclamation. Usually, the mayor or city council would set up a proclamation. They would name it Cannonball Baker Centennial Ride Day, and boy, I tell you, in Socorro, New Mexico, I mentioned that earlier. In Socorro, New Mexico, boy, it was great. They just rolled out the red carpet for us. We got there, and the mayor was there, and the city council and the city manager was there, and they had brought the newspaper and like a little television station in Socorro. And, they had this nice parchment, with the seal at the bottom of it, naming it Cannonball Centennial Ride Day. And when we got to, I believe it was Greenville, Pennsylvania, they did the same thing. And not only that, they had police cars there, they had fire trucks there, they met all of the riders. There was 27 of us who rode across the country. And so we all, parked the bikes. And these guys were there, and all of a sudden they gave us this motorcade escort into the town, and people are standing by the road, welcoming us. It was sort of embarrassing to a degree, but they really rolled out the red carpet for us, and then they had a little potluck supper for us when we got there. And it was just beautiful. It was just the little bits of Americana that that you really enjoy seeing, but then when you're part of it, it's even better.
I always enjoyed, when I was traveling on the road, finding those little out-of-the-way places to eat or little out-of-the-way places to stay. And I was always remarked how gracious and wonderful the people were, as you said, and how the food was really down-home, American-style cooking, portions huge, as compared to going into a chain restaurant or something along those lines.
Sure.
Just absolutely. So friendly, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there was one in Llano, Texas that I really liked. Unfortunately, I was there a couple of years ago, and I called the other day just to see, how it was going, and they changed the name of it. But at the time, it was called Mom's Cafe, and I just remember thinking, oh, it can't be Mom's Cafe. Yeah, and you go in, and it was like here's fresh baked pies and beef stroganoff and all this. All the candied yams and green beans, and you're just going, holy mackerel! This. They're not making this up.
No.
It's not food out of a can. It's like they really make this stuff up. And if you want some of the best road food, boy, just go to Amish country and in Lancaster County, near Intercourse, Pennsylvania, and boy, give it a whirl there. Like the Plain and Fancy Farm or Stoltzfus family restaurant, or Miller's Smorgasbord. I mean, where you're sitting at these huge picnic tables, and they just bring out huge platters of food. Fresh coleslaw and baked beans, and hot rolls, and apple pan dowdy and shoe fly pie, and you're going. You think, how much can you eat? And I remember I was sitting there eating one night. And I just kept going, and there was a Scottish family across from me, and they weren't used to American portions, So I finished the first plate, and then I finished the second plate, and they finished one plate, and they were done. And I was on my fourth plate, and they're going, God, lad, what are you putting all that? How can you eat so much? And I'm thinking, well, hey, man, I'm just getting started, And it's like, hey, would anyone like dessert? And they were done. And I'm thinking, of course, I want dessert. Then again, I weighed a lot more then, but still.
Well, I mean, and one thing you find on the road are those unusual delicacies that you don't find, like we don't find rhubarb pie. The only time I find rhubarb pie anywhere in Orlando is maybe during the holidays, maybe. But rhubarb pie. And by the way, God bless the Beverly Hillbillies. Yes, there really was possum pie. There really is all that oddball stuff. I'm telling you.
That's Gary. For my Visit Florida thing, I really brought a lot of attention because I found a place in Florida called Wausau up in the Panhandle has something called Possum Day. And I'm thinking, wait a second, is this Beverly Hillbillies? And again, I knew nothing about this, but they actually do have a possum day, and they crown the possum queen. And and so I was, going all out. I'm just trying to find out. I was really revving it up and pointing people to this contest in Possum Day on my website. Hey, everybody watch this space. We're going to find out who the possum queen is. And people actually do that stuff, and they're not kidding about it. You go to Saluda, North Carolina, and you've got Coon Dog Day Festival, or Coon Dog Days. Yeah, and all these mountain folk come out of the hills with their coon dogs around July 4th, and they'll show off their coon dogs, and they're not kidding. I mean, it's not like these people live in subdivisions; they live in the mountains, and they do have coon dogs, and so go figure. That's all out there. You just have to make an effort to go out and find it.
When I joined the Air Force, I was in basic training at Lackland Air Force Base, and I was 18, almost 19. Well, I'm 18 years old. And a young man who was in my training squadron was from the hills of Tennessee. He had never been to the big city. He had never seen anything in his life. And I had been given by a family member a Star of David to bring me good luck. Well, I'm not going to. I'll make this story quick. Well, anyway, he looked at me when he had that on, and he said, "What is that?" And I said, "Oh, that's the Star of David. It's the sign of my faith." He said, "What faith?" And I said, "Well, I'm of the Jewish faith." He said, "Oh, my God, I have never been up close and impersonal to a Jew in my entire life."
Oh, my gosh.
And I'll tell this story even quicker. Back in high school, I had a football injury on the back of my head. And since it was still fresh, only about a year and a half old, you could still see the stitching a little bit. And I said to him, joking, but he took me serious, I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, when we get our hair cut tomorrow or the next day, I will show you where I had my horn cut off."
Oh, God.
And he was in seventh heaven, and when we made a phone call in the first couple of weeks, the first thing he said to his mama on the phone was, "Mama, I've met a real Jew, and he's a really nice guy."
Oh, wow. Holy cow.
Yeah, so I mean,
I tell you, Garrett, yeah, you just, man, and that's the crazy thing. Once you get out there and start bopping around, it's like, you find all these stories. I mean, they don't happen if you're just sitting in your living room watching TV. But once you get out there, and here's another point I should make, and then I will need to run in just a little bit, Gare. But one thing I found out on this trip, on the motorcycle trip, it's the power of yes, and I'm starting to subscribe to that. And what happened was this: we were riding across the country, and again, there was only a certain number of people who were going to go the distance, going to go from San Diego to New York City.
Yeah, which I want to talk about before you go, the Cannonball Project, why it came about, and so you can get into this, because I know you only got about another 10 or 15 minutes with us, but why did this come about? And I know that it's in honor of Irwin Cannonball Burke, that did it back in Baker, that did it way back. So talk a little bit about that and how you got involved and your trip.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. And then I'll bring up the power of yes and how it all ties together. Well, what happened was back in 1914, there was a guy named Irwin Irwin Baker, and his profession was basically being a marathon motorcyclist, and people would challenge him to ride from, say, Alaska to Florida, or from Washington down to the tip of South America, and he would do it. And now keep in mind, there were very few roads, and motorcycles were very, rudimentary back then. But one challenge he had, somebody said, they said, well, we don't think you can ride from San Diego to New York City we don't think you can do it in less than 20 days. So he had a 7-horsepower Indian motorcycle, and well, he gets on the motorcycle on May 3rd, 1914, and he starts tooling it toward New York City. And again, there were very few roads west of the Mississippi, not many at all in the American Southwest, and he just starts going. And somehow, I mean, this guy would ride 18, 20 hours a day on this bike. No gas stations, had a couple of extra gas cans on his bike, hardly any water. I mean, no GPS. If the road ran out, he would try to find a railroad, and he would put his bike up on the railroad in between the rails, and he would just start blazing down the railroad. And he was doing everything he possibly could. Mm-hmm. Well, somehow he made it to New York City in 11 and a half days. They said he couldn't do it in 20. He did it in 11 and a half days. And so a couple of years ago, two motorcyclists, Joe Colombero and Don Emdy, who was a Daytona 200 champion motorcyclist, they said, gosh, it's coming up on the centennial of Cannonball Baker's feat. So they went out over the course of 2 or 3 years. They started going to historical societies and libraries and trying to do some research in what route can we possibly replicate the route that he took. And they got it as close as they could, and they started promoting it. Hey, if you want to do Cannonball route, the Cannonball Centennial ride, we've got some space for it. So anyway, I get a call from the Motorcycle Industry Council who knew about me, and they said, hey, it's our 100th anniversary as well, and we need a representative to go out there and write blogs about it, do videos about it, and, do you want to do it? And I said, oh, absolutely I do. So anyway, that's how it came about. So on a Yamaha Super Tenere that they provided for me and some really great motorcycle gear, I went out to Los Angeles, picked up the bike, rode down to San Diego on a May 3rd at 9 a.m., just the exact same time Cannonball started to the minute, 100 years to the minute. Boom, we were off, and we just started heading east. And I knew when I saw the moon coming up, it's like, okay, I keep going in this direction. I'm going the right way. Yeah. And it was, it was grueling. I mean, on the Apache Trail, it was pretty, rough sledding. I mean, we're on a dirt road, and I don't have, knobby tires on the bike. They're like street tires, but I'm navigating this, dirt path and, just trying to get through it. But one of the biggest events, the thing that really changed things for me, was that you start to recognize people on the ride. You see them at breakfast in the morning. You see them, when you get to the final point B at night. And then at point B in Kansas City, Kansas, I noticed this other guy. It's like, who's this guy? And it turned out, I said, oh, my name's Gary. He said, my name's Yermo Lammers. And I said, I haven't noticed you. And he goes, I just joined. And I'm thinking, how did this guy just join? We left San Diego 5 days ago, and how are you just joining now? Well, it turns out he was from Maryland, and he was pumping gas in Dodge City at this little station, and two Cannonball riders, Randy Aaron and Robert Pandya, pulled up at the pump opposite him, and so they're looking at each other's motorcycles, and they get in a conversation, and they ask him, they said, where are you going? He said, I'm riding from Maryland. And he said, where are you going? They said, we're riding to New York. Well, where are you from? We're from San Diego. We're doing this Cannonball ride. And then they said, do you want to join us? And without a hesitation, Yermo just goes, yeah, I'll join you. If I can join you, I'll join you. And not many people could do that. I mean, pull up to a gas station and then somebody says, yeah, we're going to New York City. And he would just go, okay. He might have been going toward Colorado. He might have been going toward North Dakota. But, all of a sudden it's like, okay, sure, I'll go to New York with you. And so they talked to Don Endy. They said, hey, can this guy join us? And Don says, I don't know. And Yermo said, I'll pay my way. He goes, I know you guys have this mapped out. you've been working on this for years. I don't want to be an intruder, but, if you'll have me, I'll pay my way, and I'd love to join you. And so Don said yes, and Yermo had said yes, and he joined us. And I realized that every one of us on that trip, because we had said yes to something in our lifetime, yes to learning to ride a motorcycle, yes to becoming a travel writer, yes to, exploring America, we had all carved out pretty nice lifestyles. And Yermo, by saying yes, all of a sudden he was riding with really some of the best motorcyclists in America. And that just changed things, because our tendency is to say no. Hey, do you want to go here for lunch? No. You want to do this next week? No. But that shuts off everything. So by saying yes, he got to see all of these things, and so I started applying that to life. People say, hey, you want to do this? And if I hadn't done it where before, I would have just said no. Now I was saying yes. And it was a good thing, because we got to explore new roads. We got to see new things. We got to take new routes, and it just opened my eyes to the possibility of what was going on, and to look at things differently.
When you're getting ready to plan a trip, because I know I got to get you out of here real soon, but what are some of the biggest surprises that you found along the way over the years from traveling from point A to point B? You went in with one conception, and it turned out to be something completely different about an area you were going to travel to.
Oh God, I think Michigan. I picked up a motorcycle, Harley Davidson, in Milwaukee, and I was going to go to Michigan. And I should know better by now that people say, well, I'm going to the Finger Lakes in New York. People will go, oh God, New York, and they think of New York City, and it's crowded and busy and all the horns honking and everything else. And so when I decided to put Michigan on the agenda, I kept thinking, it's all going to be like Detroit. It's going to be industrial and urban, and it's not going to be that great, and I'm going to be on a motorcycle. What's this all about? But then I got up the ferry. I put the motorcycle on a ferry in Milwaukee and sailed across Lake Michigan and got out in Muskegon, and I started heading north along the Lake Michigan shoreline. And I absolutely fell in love with Michigan. I mean, Western Michigan, it's like going through a storybook. I mean, you go past cherry orchards, you'll go past, people selling, fresh baked pies from stands on the side of the road, and, Christmas tree farms, and literally like a dell with a red barn, in the hollow of these rolling hills, and canopy roads and all that stuff. And then the vistas of Lake Michigan, which is like 80 miles across at that point, as you look toward Wisconsin, it completely changed my perspective of the state, and I can't wait to go back.
Yeah, I lived in Chicago for a number of years, and I've traveled to Wisconsin a lot because I've done some work for a game show company up there. And, of course, Harley-Davidson has a number of manufacturing plants up there for different parts of the motorcycles and stuff. But, yeah, that whole area of Michigan and Wisconsin and Chicago, some of the most beautiful, breathtaking land and some of the nicest people in the world, which brings me up to our final question because, like I said, I got to get you out of here. What have you learned about the people of America and about yourself all these years that you didn't know before, or that you look back and you go, wow, thank God I did that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that comes almost with every trip that I do. One is that I will never not be surprised. Because everything I think I know about a place, everything I've heard about a place, until you're actually there, you don't really know it. You have to experience it yourself. And then I've also learned that you've got to start breaking some ties with old behaviors, where you put yourself on a schedule. Okay, I'm going to get up at 8 o'clock. I'm going to leave at 9 o'clock. I'm going to, at 12 o'clock, I'm going to be here. At 3 o'clock, I'm going to be there. I'll be at the hotel at 4:30. And if that goes wrong by 15 minutes, you sort of like screwed up your day. Oh, my God, I'm 15 minutes late, and I should be here because I've got to, this was my schedule. And I've done that so many times where I've sort of like sabotaged my own trip by making these stupid schedules. And I did that once in Oregon, where I thought, okay, I've got to be in Florence, Oregon by 3 o'clock, or it's pretty much a wasted day. Anyway, I got sidetracked, and I ended up at the Tillamook Cheese Factory, where I stayed for like an hour and a half, and then it was like, wait a second, that's the wake-up call. I don't have any schedule. I'm traveling, I'm exploring, I need to be in the moment. And so I just threw the schedule out the window and went out and explored this peninsula and found a neat little lighthouse. And then I really took my time meandering, and I had more fun that day. That was the best one-day ride I ever had, going from Cannon Beach down to Florence, Oregon, because I took my time. And that was on a day when I thought everything had gotten screwed up because I was off schedule. And I have to remind myself of that every once in a while, is just to let the trip, John Steinbeck said it much better than I could. He said, we don't take trips, trips take us. Or, we don't take a journey, the journey takes us. Yeah, so you let it go. It's an organic thing. And so, just let the trip take you. And the other thing I found out is that, and it sounds sort of cliched, is that, we're all pretty similar. And whether if you watch MSNBC or if you watch Fox, you're getting very skewed ideas about America. And if you listen to politicians who are just sort of like regurgitating the same old talking points, that's a very skewed view of America.
Yeah.
And the sooner we get past that, the better. So I would suggest go out there, and you'll find that people are pretty decent. I mean, you could disagree with them politically, but that's not the level you're meeting most of these people. You're meeting them as fellow Americans. And so, just get past that nonsense. You'll find that most people are pretty kind and generous and anxious to help.
Yeah, absolutely. What's next for you?
Well, I'm going to a tourism conference next week, and then a couple of days after that, flying out to L.A. to talk at the Motorcycle Industry Council Symposium, and then going to sail down to Curacao in December. So hopefully that'll keep me busy, and then I'm working on some other projects as well.
How can people find out about your books and purchase them? And of course, when you get back from Curacao and everything in your new books, I want to have you back on. Not a year from now either, sooner than that.
Oh, right. If they go to, probably the best way to do it, they can go to GaryMcKechnie.com, and that's GaryMcKechnie, as in Nancy, IE. GaryMcKechnie.com. They can go to MotorcycleAmerica.com, and they could also go to motorcycle.org, and they can see all the blogs that I did for during the Cannonball ride, video blogs and video reports and blogs as well, and that's at motorcycle.org.
All right. Well, I promised to get you out of here, so we've got about 3 or 4 more minutes left of the show, so I guess I'm going to get you out of here earlier than I thought.
Oh. Well, if you want to chat for 3 more minutes, wind me up and watch me go.
Okay, all right. Well, I just, I know you said you had to go, but, of all the back road trips that you've taken throughout this country, is there one in particular that you like to go back to more than once, or you've gone back more than once for one particular reason or another?
There's one that I would like to do again is that Kansas ride, because Kansas is not a state that a lot of people go to, a lot of tourists go to at least, because, there's, in general, there's not much there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but if you go there, that's part of the appeal of it, is that you're by yourself. You can get to a point where you're in northern Kansas, where you can park your motorcycle, park your car, and get outside and look around, and you can look from horizon to horizon, and roughly you can see about 15 miles before the horizon or the earth, would start to bend. So anyway, you do the math, and you can be in 900 square miles, 30 miles to your left and right, 30 miles, in front of you, behind you. And so that's 900 square miles, and it's only you, and what a great thing to experience when you're, when you're, your life is crowded with, convenience stores and strip malls and traffic and billboards and all that stuff, just to get out there. Another one that's really popular is when you're driving south. I mean, get on the Blue Ridge Parkway. That's thank goodness for Franklin Roosevelt. You know, he got that going as part of a WPA project in the 1930s, and it's one of the most beautiful roads in America. You've got fantastic vistas along the way. The speed limit's about, I think, 45 or 50 miles an hour, so it's just a nice casual drive, and great little mountain towns along the way. It's phenomenal. And again, you don't need a passport to see. You just need to go.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of people don't go traveling by car or whatever because they just don't want to leave home, or they have a great fear of getting out of their own backyard, or what?
Exactly. Yeah, I think a lot of people just you get caught in a routine. I do it too. I mean, I eat at the same restaurants all the time when I'm at home, but I have to get out and about. Yeah, a lot of people just think, okay, this is what I'm going to do this week, and I got to clean out the garage. And Sunday I've got to, I've got to get together with some friends and do this. And then Monday I'm back at work, and then Friday I'm still at work. But next Saturday, I've got a football game, or I got to take my kids to the football game, and you just sort of like get into that trap, but it's also life. But if you're privileged enough to live in America, you should at least have some recognize something that you owe it to yourself to go and see it.
Yeah, I think I've been privileged enough to travel around the world in one form or another, and I think America is one of the most beautiful countries in all the world. One of my favorite cities is San Diego. I love San Diego very much. I love the Dakotas, except in the wintertime. I don't want to be there in the winter. But I love America, and I love everything about it. And even you go into Canada, and you go to some of the western states in Canada. I mean, we live in a beautiful, beautiful country. And for people not to want to go see it, I understand sometimes you just can't afford it. But boy, if you can get out there, like you said, right in your own backyard, you can go and see some beautiful historical sites. Here in Orlando, of course, we don't have a lot of historical sites in Orlando, but for the most part, if you're in Chicago or some other place, there's always, right there in the city, the Lincoln Park Zoo. That used to be a cemetery, and there are still Civil War veterans buried there that they can't find. Chicago's full of beautiful and historical places, and all of that whole area. Gary, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. It's Gary McKechnie, GaryMcKechnie.com. If you want to get his books, if they want to get in touch with you, they can through your website. You've written some great books about traveling around the country. I just want to thank you so much for being with us, and we're going to have you back a lot sooner than just a year from now.
That sounds great, Gary. Hey, thanks so much. I really appreciate your interest in this stuff.
Well, I do. I love travel, and as Charles Kuralt would say, we'll be back on the road again, and to use your phrase, get off your laptop and get on the blacktop.
That's right. Okay, thanks a lot, Gary.
You're welcome, Gary. Good night now.
Bye-bye.
Well, I think that just about wraps it up for tonight. Next week, folks, we got a good show for you in that it's going to be a free forum, providing EW is okay. We are going to be talking about a whole group of subjects that are going on currently in the world itself, and there's a lot to talk about. So between now and then, thank you so much for sharing an hour with me. Thanks for coming on board, and please take care of yourselves and take care of each other.
You've been listening to The Express with Gary Allen. Join us here every Tuesday night at 10 for more captivating talk with Gary Allen. See you next time on The Express.